Hello, welcome to Undisputed Boxing. We are here to talk about YouTube boxing and the sort of the crossover from MMA into boxing. I think it's a topic that's been gathering a lot of momentum over the last sort of 12 to 18 months with Mike Tyson and Roy Jones Jr. So just want to do a quick video, get Rick's opinion on some of these fights that are being touted and some of the ones that we've had as well so far. Looking rough and ready for a Sunday afternoon. No shave?
No, still in lockdown in the UK, so the bum look remains and will continue probably until sometime in March. So I'm going to look really bad. I'm going for the Tom Hanks Castaway look.
You should grow it. All right, let's get into this one. Just before we get into it, if you're new to the channel, please like and subscribe and share the videos. Rick and I have been following boxing for a good number of years now, and it's just something that we just started sort of towards the end of last year as our kind of lockdown project. So yeah, I hope you enjoy the content. So Ben Askren looks like he's going to be fighting Jake Paul in a boxing match in April-May time. I don't think it's been confirmed on the date yet, but I think it's similar to what they did with Logan Paul and Mayweather, just putting it out there and see what the response is like. So those of you that are not familiar with MMA, Ben Askren is an Olympic American wrestler, pretty much won everything in wrestling at Olympic level. Crossed over into MMA, I think firstly with Bellator. He was, I think, welterweight champion for a number of years, beat some really accomplished MMA fighters. I'm just trying to think of, God, the names. I'll have to bring the name up. But anyway, he crossed over into one championship and then went over to UFC. And pretty much had a bit of a nightmare. I think he beat Robbie Lawler, which was actually a controversial stoppage. Douglas Lima, that was it. I was trying to think of Douglas Lima. He beat in Bellator, and then I think it was George Masvidal nuked him in about 5 seconds. And yeah, he's a bit of a divisive character. It talks a lot of shit, and I think that's part of the appeal. But he doesn't really have a striking game. So if you go onto YouTube, you have a look at him on the pads, or there's actually a montage of his striking in the octagon, and you know it's pretty poor. But he has competed at a very high level. So I think him against Jake Paul. Jake Paul is half decent boxer. I think if he was to turn pro tomorrow, then he could. I don't know if he'd win a world title, but they do. I think the casual fans, I think, see this as a much kind of level pecking. It's a bit of a pick and fight, basically. But what's your take on this and YouTube boxing as a whole?
Yeah, I mean, I don't really know the guy that well. I mean, I follow MMA a bit, but not like nothing like I do on boxing. And I just know him for the guy that got cleaned out within 5 seconds with a flying knee. And I just remember the sound of when the knee hit. But you're right, Jake Paul is does look quite good as a boxer, considering he's not professional. But he's only ever been in with other YouTubers, so it's really hard to judge. And there's levels to all this. And I'd probably back the guy that is a professional fighter, combat fighter, than Jake Paul to win this. But hard to know, and not something I get particularly excited about, if I'm honest. Anything like this, I think if it's, I mean, this is really one that I'm not excited about at all. I think if it was Mayweather against the brother, I think I just enjoy that just to see Mayweather out again. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Not that I think it's particularly competitive, just to see Mayweather. But at the end of the day, I don't have an issue with the YouTube stuff. I mean, I've seen like Hearn talk about it a bit, and I tend to agree with him in the sense of it's good to get interest and to maybe give boxing a bit of a shot in the arm every now and then in terms of numbers. but I don't want it to dominate, and I don't want it to kind of, you know, it's a shame that these that don't really have much talent can be put in a ring and earn so much money. You know, when it's YouTuber on YouTube versus someone who's actually got a bit of talent against another person and earn, you know, a few grand. So, but I think that there's a balance to be had where it can be very good for the sport, but it could be very bad for the support. The sport, and it's about getting that balance right. And, you know, a couple a year with one mega one with a big set of numbers, I've got nothing against it. I think the one that has, again, that when it's not YouTubers, when it's like old fighters like Tyson and people like that coming back and fighting, I think again that has pros and cons, and it can give a shot in the arm a little bit, but probably less so. And the downsides are a bit, is it morally right to see people that age trying to beat crap out of each other? I think the problem is, like, the YouTubers are almost, it's a totally different audience coming into boxing. The Mike Tyson are, they're not massive boxing fans, but they're interested because they once watched Mike Tyson. So my argument would be, why have you fallen out of love with the sport? Why are you not watching Joshua if you once watched Mike Tyson, or, you know, Wilder, or some of the others? And it may just be they don't think they're good enough, exciting enough, but then are they really into boxing? That'd be my thing. So whereas you know, somebody who's never been into boxing suddenly falling in love with boxing because they've never really seen it before through YouTube, then I'm all for that. But again, with both of them, it's you know, the balance has got to be had, really. But yeah, as to the fights, I don't really know enough about a lot of it to comment on that. I mean, you're right, they do sometimes just put it out there, don't they, to see if it's going to do well or not.
And I think this will, because, you know, Ben Askren is a big shit talker, and actually the press conference will probably be more entertaining than the fight itself. I've got to admit, I probably would watch it, but if I, you know, if they were to say, right, no more YouTube boxing from tomorrow, I'd probably be very, very happy with that. I'm not a huge fan of it, to be honest. I wasn't a fan of Mike Tyson against Roy Jones Jr. I didn't even watch that. I watched highlights maybe a few days later, just to, you know, merely out of interest, but I wasn't sold on it at all. But here's the thing, I knew that it was going to do well, you know, commercially. I knew that it probably would have done close to 1 million pay-per-view buys, and I think it did over that actually in the end. So it's almost three times the amount that Wilder versus Fury did on pay-per-view, which is crazy.
Yeah, and that's what I mean. That's where it's a good shot in the arm. But if it's on if everyone once a month, it's almost like, you know, daft boxing that does really, really well, and proper boxing that's behind it just shouldn't sit that way, really, for me. I mean, I never even watched Mayweather and McGregor. I didn't even buy that.
Did you not? I did. I watched.
And out of all the ones that have been done, that's the one that's probably the most competitive. But I was still like, nah, not.
But even that, I mean,
really,
the first round was quite exciting because McGregor cracked Mayweather, but, you know, Mayweather is just light years ahead of McGregor. I mean, you look at, you know, some of the MMA boxing, the boxing skills are, I mean, Ben Askren I'd include in this. The boxing skills are actually embarrassing, like, in compared to a true boxer, somebody that's been doing it since the age of 10 or 11, you know. And I totally understand it, because in MMA, like, striking isn't as important as ground game or wrestling. You know, most accomplished. I mean, I'm a casual fan when it comes to MMA as well, big time. You know, not boxing has always been my thing, but I've had an interest in some MMA fights over the years. John Jones, you know, Israel Adesanya, I quite like him. McGregor, obviously, they're always good to watch. But when you see them, like, on the pads and the pad work, that, like, they're just miles away from boxers, because they have to focus on maybe 3 or 4 other disciplines as well to kind of round off their game. So putting them in the ring, it's got to be with a boxer who's just not that, you know, not that great. So Mayweather, McGregor,
and also it's the fitness is different. I'm not saying harder or not, it's just different, and there's different types of fitness. You can be, you know, you can run a marathon, but you might struggle on a bike because it's just different, you know. And you know, there's the 5-minute rounds. There's a 5-minute rounds versus, you know, the boxing that the 12-3. Even just that is different.
Yeah.
On your feet the whole time through that, and keeping your hands up the whole time through that is different than if you're on the ground. And don't get me wrong, groundwork is knackering, you know.
Yeah.
Would be knackering, but it's a different thing. So there's all those things to kind of with, I suppose. And even things probably about, you know, good boxers know how to use the ropes and know how to use the ring and its dimensions and that. And you don't get the same in M&A, do you?
No.
Don't get me wrong, if a boxer went the other way, it'd be the same. A few have, haven't they? And it's been embarrassing. So.
Yeah, the ones that spring to mind, James Toney crossed over to MMA, got absolutely annihilated. That wasn't great. But there are some. I mean, I remember there was talk about a year ago of Francis Ngannou getting into the ring and potentially fighting Dillian Whyte. Now that's something I'd get excited for. I don't know if you've seen much of Francis Ngannou.
What's happened to him?
He's still.
I have. I remember you hyping on him, and I've seen.
Yeah, I just think him in a boxing ring, I think, is intriguing. You know, he does have boxing skill. He does that. His problem is that he doesn't have very good ground game. He doesn't have any jiu-jitsu, any wrestling. I think he's worked on it since. But yeah, he's still, I think, knocking on the door to, you know, for a world title. Again, I'm not following it that closely, and I think
has he fought recently?
I'll have to check.
I don't remember him fighting since the pandemic started, really, because I remember you send videos when he's fought.
Yeah, let me just double check. I'll tell you in a minute. I can just have a quick look on. But he's 34 now as well, so he would need to kind of get a move on if he does want to cross over. But the problem is when you've got a contract with the UFC, it's very unlikely. Yeah, he fought in May last year. He knocked out Rosenstrike. He beat Rosenstrike.
Did you to fight again soon?
Sorry?
Did you to fight again soon?
Yeah, he would be due to fight again soon. Yeah, there's nothing. It doesn't look like there's anything penciled in, but yeah, he lost world title tilt against Stipe Miocic, who just basically got him to the ground, and it was all over for him. And then he had an absolute stinker against another striker called Derek Lewis, which he lost on a decision. But yeah, we'll see. Say again.
I thought he was unbeaten for some reason.
No, he's lost a couple now. He's lost a couple, yeah. But the mystique of an undefeated MMA, it's not as catastrophic as it is in boxing. Like you lose one fight in boxing, and it's like, oh yeah, he's shit. He should retire.
Imagine if Lewis had done that.
Yeah, I know. Lennox.
Afternoon.
Yeah.
Okay, radio.
All right, so yeah, we'll see. We'll maybe do a bit of a prediction on this, but I'd say that Ben Askren is probably going to lose to Jake Paul. That would be my 2 pence worth. I think he'll probably. I don't know if he'll win him by knockout, but I could see it getting quite embarrassing. But yeah, if you go to YouTube and have a look at Ben Askren's striking and his pad work, he's he could get beat by a YouTuber, which would be a bit of a sad ending really to his career. But the build-up will be fun, and I probably will follow it a little bit.
We disagree then, because I back the fight the MMA guy, but then I don't really know much on this, so we'll see.
All right, cool. Let's wrap it up. Okay, thanks everybody for listening.